Racism isn't always loud. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight and you might be walking right past it without even realizing. Asterisk, most people think racism is only about shouting slurs, hate crimes, or extreme prejudice. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. Racism often hides in subtle, everyday actions. In policies we assume are neutral, and in the thoughts we don't even realize we're having. Today, we're going to break down 10 hidden signs of racism you might be ignoring. By the end of this video, you'll be able to spot subtle biases in daily life, understand how they hurt people, and take steps to stop them. And don't worry, we'll go in countdown order, starting from the least obvious and moving to the ones that have the biggest impact. Asterisk 10. Ignoring microaggressions are subtle, often unintentional slights that express a negative or stereotypical belief about a marginalized group. They can be a phrase, a gesture, or even a tone of voice. For example, when someone says to a black colleague, "You're so articulate," it might sound like a compliment, but it assumes that being well-spoken is unexpected. Or, when a person of Asian descent is asked, "Where are you really from?" it implies they can't be truly part of the country. These small actions accumulate over time and can make people feel unwelcome, undervalued, or alienated. Repeated exposure to microaggressions contributes to stress, anxiety, and even depression. Think about it. Have you ever said something you thought was harmless, but maybe it hurt someone else? That's And the truth is, almost all of us have been guilty of it at some point. 9. Unequal representation. And media representation is about who we see on screens, movies, TV shows, commercials, and in leadership positions. Consider how many action heroes, CEOs, or news anchors are still overwhelmingly white or male. When marginalized groups are represented, they're often stereotyped or given token roles. Media shapes how society views different groups. Children who grow up without seeing people like themselves in leadership positions may internalize a sense of limitation. Studies also show that stereotypical portrayals reinforce biases and assumptions. Representation isn't just about checking boxes. It shapes identity, opportunity, and self-esteem. Ignoring this imbalance is a subtle form of systemic racism. 8. Implicit bias in decision-making. Implicit bias is the unconscious preference for certain groups over others. It affects hiring, promotions, lending, policing, and even daily social interactions. Research shows that identical resumes receive fewer callbacks. If the applicant has a non-white sounding name, a teacher may unconsciously call on male students more often than female. Students in STEM classes. These biases aren't about intentional malice. They're often invisible to the person acting on them, but the impact is real. They perpetuate inequality, create systemic barriers, and reinforce stereotypes. Implicit bias doesn't make someone a bad person, but it does mean we have to work actively to recognize it and correct it. 7. Disproportionate discipline in schools or workplaces. Disproportionate discipline occurs when individuals from certain racial groups are disciplined more harshly for the same behavior as others. A study by the U.S. Department of Education found black students are suspended and expelled at rates 3 times higher than white students for similar infractions. Similarly, employees from minority groups are more likely to face warnings or stricter consequences for minor mistakes. This type of hidden racism affects life outcomes from academic achievement to career advancement. It also shapes trust in institutions and can create long-term resentment and disengagement. Imagine growing up always expecting to be punished more harshly than others, just for your skin color. That's the invisible weight of systemic racism. 6. Avoiding conversations about race. Many people avoid discussions about race, fearing conflict or discomfort, but silence can perpetuate bias. Family gatherings, office meetings, or social groups often skirt discussions about race, even when racial issues are clearly affecting the group. By avoiding these conversations, people fail to challenge stereotypes or correct subtle injustices. Change requires awareness and open dialogue. Talking about race is uncomfortable, but silence is complicit. The first step to change is simply having the conversation. 5. Racial stereotypes in language. Certain words and phrases carry racial assumptions, even when we don't intend them to. Calling someone a thug or referring to someone as a model minority may seem harmless but reinforces limiting ideas about entire groups. Language shapes perception. Stereotypes in speech influence decisions, policies, and attitudes in subtle but powerful ways. Every time we repeat a stereotype, even casually, we reinforce the barriers people face. 4. Unequal access to resources. Differences in education, healthcare, housing, or loans disproportionately affect racial minorities. Redlining, healthcare disparities, and unequal school funding are modern examples. Even policies that seem neutral can have discriminatory outcomes. Access to resources shapes opportunities and life outcomes. Hidden racism in systems can be harder to spot but just as damaging as overt acts. Hidden racism isn't just about personal behavior. It's embedded in the systems that shape our daily lives. 3. is including one or two people from a minority group. 2. Create the appearance of diversity. A company hires a single minority employee and markets themselves as inclusive without providing real support or opportunities. Tokenism can be alienating and reinforces inequality by giving the illusion of progress without structural change. Diversity isn't just a checkbox, it's about inclusion, equity, and real opportunity. 2. Cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is adopting elements of a marginalized culture without understanding or respect. Wearing traditional garments as a fashion trend, using sacred symbols as decor, or commercializing cultural practices are common examples. It reduces rich cultural identities to trends, erases historical context, and can be deeply hurtful. Respect and understanding are key. Appreciation is different from appropriation, and knowing the line matters. 1. Racial profiling. Racial profiling is assuming someone's behavior, intentions, or worth based solely on race. Being stopped by police without cause, being followed in stores, or being excluded from opportunities based on race are examples. Racial profiling directly threatens safety, freedom, and daily life. It's one of the most overt forms of hidden racism and yet happens every day. This is where hidden racism becomes visible, and it's a harsh reminder that subtle biases often escalate into real-world consequences. Racism isn't always loud, obvious, or easy to spot. Sometimes it hides in the small, everyday choices we make, the words we use, the decisions we take without even thinking. It's in the unconscious biases that shape how we see the world, in the policies and systems that we assume are neutral, and even in the media we consume without questioning it. These hidden forms of racism are powerful because they are often invisible. But just because we don't always see them doesn't mean they aren't there. The first step to change is awareness. Recognizing these hidden signs doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you human. What matters is what you do after you recognize them. Awareness allows us to reflect on our own actions, our assumptions, and the ways we might unintentionally perpetuate stereotypes or inequalities. It allows us to challenge the subtle biases in our communities, workplaces, schools, and social circles. And it gives us the tools to make decisions that are more just, equitable, and compassionate. It's also important to remember that this is not a one-time effort. Learning to recognize hidden racism is a lifelong process. There will be times when you get it wrong, say the wrong thing, or fail to notice your own biases. That's okay. What matters is that you are willing to listen, to learn, and to do better. Small actions accumulate over time, and the cumulative effect of countless people committing to awareness and change can reshape society in meaningful ways. We also need to consider the broader systems around us. Hidden racism isn't just about individual behavior, it's embedded in the structures of our workplaces, schools, neighborhoods, and governments. Challenging these systems requires both courage and persistence. It means speaking up when you see injustice, supporting policies that promote equality, amplifying voices that are too often silenced, and refusing to accept the status quo simply because it is comfortable or familiar. And while this might sound overwhelming, remember that every small step counts. Educating yourself, having difficult conversations, questioning stereotypes, and being mindful of your own behavior are all actions that contribute to change. Every time you call out a advocate for fair representation or rethink a biased assumption, you are pushing back against the hidden forms of racism that shape our world. If this video made you pause, reflect, or question something you hadn't noticed before, that's a sign that change is possible. Awareness is the starting point, but action is what drives progress. Share what you've learned with your friends, your family, and your community. Encourage open dialogue. Don't shy away from discomfort, because growth rarely happens in comfort. And most importantly, lead by example. Your choices, your words, and your awareness can inspire others to examine their own biases and take action. At the end of the day, creating a world free of racism, both overt and hidden, isn't the responsibility of any single person.